Hello students, today we are going to study about the sense organs and we are going to focus our discussion on structure of human eye, the common eye defects and the detailed structure of human ear. Now, in order to study the detailed structure of human eye, we first need to know that the human eyeball is made up of three layers. The outermost is the sclera, the middle is the choroid, and the innermost is the retina. The sclera is referred to as the fibrous sclera because the sclera is tough, it is fibrous, it is opaque, and it is white. Choroid, on the other hand, it is pigmented and vascular. And retina is the nervous layer. Now the sclera covers the entire surface of the eyeball excepting the front bulging portion of the eye. It's denoted by the blue layer as you can see in the diagram. Now the basic function of sclera is to protect the inner delicate parts of the eyeball and to maintain the shape of the eyeball. Now in the front bulging part of the eye, the sclera is continued as a transparent non-vascular cornea. The cornea, because of its curvature, it brings about the refraction of the light rays. Now the choroid, the second layer below the sclera, is richly pigmented and vascular. The pigment present in the choroid absorbs the excess of light rays and prevents them from scattering inside the eyeball. And since it is richly vascular, which means provided with large number of blood vessels, it supplies nutrients to various parts of the eyeball. The choroid is continued in the front part of the eye as the iris. Now, iris is a circular disc which remains suspended between the cornea and the lens. The iris has two important functions. First, it regulates the size of the pupil, and second, it imparts coloration to the eye. What is the meaning of regulating the size of the pupil? When we are exposed to bright light, our pupils constrict, and when we are exposed to dim light, our pupils dilate. So when we are exposed to bright light, the pupils constrict so that less light can enter, and under dim light conditions, the pupil dilates so as to allow more light to enter. The size of the pupil is under the control of iris. Besides that, it also imparts coloration to the eye. Just behind the junction of the cornea and the sclera, ciliary body is present. Now the ciliary body consists of ciliary muscles and ciliary processes. The ciliary muscles, along with the suspensory ligament, they bring about changes in the shape of the lens, or in other words, they regulate the focal length of the lens. Now the lens is biconvex, it is transparent, and it is crystalline in nature. It is located in a cavity of the eyeball and it divides the cavity of the eyeball into an anterior chamber and a posterior chamber. The anterior chamber is filled with a substance which is called aqueous humor, and the posterior chamber or the vitreous chamber is filled with a fluid called vitreous humor. Now the suspensory ligament, which along with ciliary muscles play a role in changing the focal length of the lens for power of accommodation, also keeps the lens in position. The innermost layer, which is the nervous layer of the eyeball, is the retina. Why it is referred to as the nervous layer? Because it is made up of the photosensitive neurons, the rods and the cones. The rods are sensitive to dim light, whereas the cones are sensitive to bright light. What is the function of retina? Retina serves as a screen for image formation. After the light rays pass through the cornea, they pass through the aqueous humor, then through the pupil, then through the lens, where the convergence of the light rays ultimately helps them to focus on the fovea. So the image that is formed is on the retina. So retina serves as a screen for image formation. Now fovea is a central depression located in a structure called yellow spot. Now yellow spot or macula lutea is located at the exact center of the posterior portion of the retina corresponding to the visual axis. Visual axis is an imaginary line passing through the eye horizontally. So, yellow spot or the macula lutea is located at the exact center of the posterior portion of the retina corresponding to the visual axis. It is the region of best vision or the brightest vision or the sharpest vision because it has the maximum number of cones. And fovea centralis or central fovea is a depression, central depression in the yellow spot. It is the region of brightest vision or best vision because it has only cones. And remember, cones are responsible for color vision. Cones are sensitive to bright light. Now below the yellow spot, there is another structure which is called the blind spot. Now the blind spot is the region where the optic nerve exits the eyeball, carrying the impulses, the sensory impulses rather, from the eyeball to the brain. Optic nerve is a sensory nerve. Now the blind spot is the region of no vision. If an image is formed over here, it cannot be perceived. The reason is due to the absence of photosensitive neurons, that is the rods and the cones. So the blind spot is devoid of rods and cones. So an image formed over here cannot be perceived. Hence it is referred to as the region of no vision. Now, aqueous chamber, the anterior chamber, as I told you, it is filled with a fluid which has got watery consistency called aqueous humor. Aqueous humor, besides acting as a refracting medium, it also keeps the lens moist. Now the vitreous humor filling up the vitreous chamber, it is jelly-like in nature. So it not only maintains the shape of the eyeball, it also protects the retina and its nerve endings. Besides that, it also acts as a refracting medium. So light rays pass through the cornea and get refracted. They pass through the aqueous humor, which also acts as a refracting medium. Then the light rays pass through the pupil and the lens. The lens brings about maximum convergence of light rays. Then the light rays pass through the vitreous humor, which also acts as a refracting medium. Finally, they converge on the fovea or the yellow spot. And the characteristic of the image formed in the fovea or the yellow spot are real, inverted, and diminished. Now, these sensory impulses or light impulses are converted to nervous impulses and are carried by the optic nerve to the occipital lobe of the brain, which is responsible for vision. So now that you have studied the detailed structure of the eye, let us know about few of the common eye defects. Myopia, otherwise called short-sightedness or nearsightedness, is a very common eye defect. In this eye defect, a person can see the near objects clearly, but distant vision is blurred. That's why it is called nearsightedness or short-sightedness. And as you can see, this figure shows a myopic eye. In a myopic eye, the rays, instead of converging on the fovea centralis, they are converging in the vitreous humor located in front of the retina. Now, there could be two reasons for this. One, the eyeball has lengthened from front to back, so the rays are not able to reach the retina. And the second thing is the lens has become too curved, bringing about their convergence in the vitreous humor. In order to correct this defect, we can use a concave lens, which is a diverging lens. So, when we are wearing a concave lens, it brings about the divergence of the light rays. Finally, when it passes through the convex lens of the eyes, the rays converge and they focus on the retina, and we can see the things clearly. The second common eye defect is hypermetropia or hyperopia or far-sightedness or long-sightedness. So, as the name suggests, long-sightedness, that means a person can see the distant objects clearly, but the nearer vision is blurred. And in a hyperopic eye, the rays converge behind the retina, as you can see in the figure. They are not converging on the retina, they are going behind the retina and converging. So a person cannot see the nearer objects clearly. This may be due to two possible reasons. First, shortening of the eyeball from front to back. The eyeball has shortened from front to back. Or the lens is too flat. If the lens is too flat, then also the rays are going to converge behind the retina. So in order to correct this defect, we can use a converging lens or a convex lens. So the rays, light rays coming from the source will pass through the first convex lens and then the rays converge. Further, they are made to pass through the lens of the eye and the rays converge further, and finally they focus on the retina and we can see the things clearly. The next eye defect which we are going to discuss is astigmatism. Astigmatism is caused due to different curvatures in different meridians. Now, this might happen to cornea as well as to the lens. The cornea or the lens, they may have different curvatures in different meridians. So as a result, instead of focusing at one point, they have multiple focal points. So this figure shows an astigmatic eye where the cornea is having irregular curvature. So when the cornea or the lens, they have irregular curvatures or different curvatures at different meridians, the rays do not focus at one point. Instead, they form multiple focal points. So the image that is formed, it gets distorted and the vision is blurred. It can be corrected by the use of cylindrical lenses or contact lenses. The next eye defect is presbyopia. Presbyopia is a kind of long-sightedness observed in people after they attain an age of 40 years. And this is due to the loss of elasticity of the ciliary muscles. So when the ciliary muscles lose their elasticity, the lens loses its flexibility. So this is the diagram of a presbyopic eye where the lens has hardened and it cannot focus. It cannot change its shape or change its focal length to accommodate the focal length of the object. So as a result, the rays, they converge behind the retina. This is the figure of a normal eye with a normal lens, whereas here this is a presbyopic eye with the lens hardened, and this has happened with age. So the lens has lost its flexibility because the ciliary muscles, they have lost their elasticity. As a result, the rays, light rays, instead of focusing on the retina, they focus behind the retina. So corrective measure, same as that of long-sightedness, we got to use a convex lens, a converging lens. So when we are using a converging lens or a convex lens, the rays ultimately converge on the retina and we can see the objects clearly. But for those who are already using glasses for rectifying myopia, they have to go for bifocal lens. Now the next eye defect is glaucoma. Glaucoma is a condition in which the intraocular pressure increases. Intraocular pressure, it means the existing pressure inside the eyeball due to the presence of fluids that increases due to the accumulation of aqueous humor. I had told you earlier, aqueous humor is located between the cornea and the lens. It is formed normally and it is drained also normally. Now, aqueous humor supplies nutrients to different parts of the eyeball. It also keeps the lens moist. Now, when the drainage channels, they get blocked as shown in this diagram. When the drainage channels are getting blocked, the aqueous humor, instead of getting drained, it gets accumulated. As a result, the intraocular pressure increases and it might lead to blindness. So what is the corrective measure? Corrective measure is surgical drainage of aqueous humor. Now the next common eye defect is night blindness. In night blindness, a person cannot see clearly in dim light intensity. This is the vision of a normal eye. This is the vision of a person suffering from night blindness. And night blindness occurs due to the deficiency of vitamin A in the diet. What is the necessity of vitamin A? Vitamin A is required for the synthesis of rhodopsin, which is the pigment found in the rods. And I have told you earlier, rods contain rhodopsin, and rods are the photosensitive neurons which are stimulated by dim light intensity. They help you to see in dim light intensity. So, when there is deficiency of vitamin A, there would be deficiency of rhodopsin, and as a result, the rods will not be functioning properly. So, we suffer from this condition called night blindness. Now, cataract. Cataract is a very common eye defect in old people. Now, this is the diagram of a normal eye, and this is the diagram of a cataract eye. As you can see over here, at the central portion, it has become whitish in color. That shows that the lens has become completely opaque. But you know, our lens is biconvex, it is crystalline, and it is transparent. But when a person suffers from cataract, his eye lens becomes completely opaque. So as a result, the light rays would not be passing through the lens, and it would lead to complete blindness. So it can be corrected surgically by removing the lens and by implanting another lens. Now, color blindness is a genetic defect, hereditary disease. It means it passes on from one generation to the other generation. This is the vision of normal eye, and this is the vision of a colorblind eye. Color blindness, as I said, it is a genetic disease, and the most common type of color blindness is the red and green color blindness. A person cannot differentiate between red and green colors. So since it is a genetic defect, correction would be through gene therapy. Now the next sense organ which we are going to study is human ear. Now human ear, it's not only the organ of hearing, but it is also the organ which maintains body equilibrium or body balance. Now the human ear is studied under three headings. The external ear, which consists of the pinna, the auditory canal, and the tympanum. The middle ear, which consists of the ear ossicles, the eustachian tube, the oval window, and the round window. And the inner ear, or the membranous labyrinth, or the internal ear, which consists of the cochlea, the semicircular canals, and the utricle and saccule, also called utriculus and sacculus respectively. This diagram shows the parts of the outer ear or the external ear. Outer ear consists of the pinna, the auditory canal, and the tympanum. The pinna is a cartilaginous flap located on either side of the head. It collects the sound waves and directs them towards the auditory canal, which is also referred to as the external auditory meatus. Now the next part is the auditory canal, which is an 1-inch long canal. It conducts the sound waves towards the tympanum. It is lined by hair and modified sebaceous glands called ceruminous glands. The ceruminous glands secrete cerumen, commonly called earwax. The earwax or the cerumen and the hair, they trap the dust particles and other foreign substances and prevent them from entering into the inner parts of the ear. Now the tympanum is a tightly stretched membrane having the diameter of a pencil head. It receives the sound waves and starts vibrating. So, the function of the tympanic membrane or the tympanum, or commonly called the eardrum, is to convert the sound waves into mechanical vibrations. So, what are the functions of different parts of the outer ear? The pinna collects the sound waves and directs it towards the auditory canal. The auditory canal conducts the sound waves from the pinna to the tympanum. Tympanum converts the sound waves into mechanical vibrations. Now the middle ear consists of the ear ossicles. There are 3 ear ossicles, the malleus, the incus and the stapes. And it also consists of a long hollow tube which connects the middle ear with the throat. That's called the eustachian tube. So eustachian tube connects the middle ear or the cavity of the middle ear with the throat. And besides eustachian tube, it also consists of the oval window and the round window. So the first, let us come to the ear ossicles. The ear ossicles are the malleus, the incus and the stapes, commonly called the hammer, the anvil and the stirrup, respectively. Now, because of their lever-like attachment, they magnify the amplitude of the mechanical vibrations. Besides that, they help in the transmission of the mechanical vibrations from the tympanum to the oval window. The oval window isn't actually a window. It is a tightly stretched membrane having the diameter of a pinhead. It lies at the junction of the middle ear and the inner ear. The function of the oval window is to conduct or transmit the mechanical vibrations from the ear ossicles to the cochlea, which is a part of the internal ear. The round window situated below the oval window at the junction of the middle ear and inner ear, it dampens the movement of fluid in the cochlea and it acts as a dampener and reduces the movement of fluid in the cochlea. So let us summarize the different parts of the middle ear. The middle ear consists of 3 ear ossicles, which are 3 small bones present in the cavity of the middle ear. In fact, the stapes or the stirrup is the smallest bone in the body. The malleus, the incus and the stapes are the ear ossicles, commonly called hammer, anvil and the stirrup, respectively because of their shapes. Function of the ear ossicles is to conduct or transmit the mechanical vibrations from the tympanic membrane to the oval window. And because of their lever-like attachment, they magnify the amplitude of sound vibrations. Now the eustachian tube, as I said, it is a hollow tube which connects the cavity of the middle ear with the throat. The function of the eustachian tube is to equalize the air pressure on either side of the tympanum. Normally, it remains closed and opens up under circumstances like yawning. The function of the eustachian tube is to equalize the air pressure on either side of the tympanum. The oval window is a tightly stretched membrane having the diameter of a pinhead. Function: to conduct or transmit the mechanical vibrations from the ear ossicles to the cochlea. Round window situated below the oval window acts as a dampener and reduces the movement of fluid in the cochlea. Now this diagram shows the internal ear or the membranous labyrinth or the inner ear. Now inner ear consists of the cochlea, the semicircular canals and the utricule and the saccule. Cochlea is a coiled structure shaped like a snail's shell. Internally, it is made up of 2.5 turns divided by 2 membranes into 3 bony canals. The middle canal of the cochlea, which is called scala media or the cochlear canal, houses the organ of Cuttack. Organ of Cuttack is the organ of hearing. It is also referred to as the sound reception system or the audio receptor organ. The outer and the inner canal of the cochlea are filled with perilymph, but the middle canal, the scala media or the cochlear canal, is filled with endolymph. So, the function of cochlea is, it is the organ of hearing. Now there are 3 semicircular canals, 2 in the vertical plane and 1 in the horizontal plane, lying perpendicular to each other. One end of each semicircular canal is swollen, and that swollen end is referred to as ampulla. The ampulla contains receptor cells called cristae. The semicircular canals are filled with endolymph. The function of semicircular canals is that it maintains dynamic equilibrium in the body, that is, maintenance of body equilibrium when the body is in motion. Now, in between the semicircular canals and the cochlea, 2 sensory patches are present in the form of utricle and saccule, or utriculus and sacculus respectively. The utricle and saccule, like the semicircular canals, are also filled with endolymph, and these help in maintenance of static equilibrium in the body, maintenance of body equilibrium with respect to position and gravity. So, to summarize the parts of the ear, the external ear consists of the pinna, the auditory canal and the tympanum. The middle ear consists of the ear ossicles, the eustachian tube, the round window and the oval window. And the internal ear consists of the cochlea, the utricule and saccule and the semicircular canals. And ear is not only the organ of hearing but also the organ of body equilibrium. So you learned that semicircular canals help in maintenance of dynamic equilibrium and utricule and saccule helps in maintenance of static equilibrium. Thank you.